Well, whatever Americans are grateful for this Thanksgiving, Joe Biden's economy, probably not on the list. That's the indication from the latest data from the University of Michigan, which shows consumer sentiment has dropped for 4 months in a row as short-term inflation expectations rise to a 7-month high. Rick Newman's been following the impact on the national mood, and as we've talked about many times, closely indexed to inflation and very closely indexed to gasoline prices, although those are down.
It depends what you're comparing it to, and I think that's the whole point. So, I mean, the Biden White House keeps saying, compared with a year ago, gasoline prices are down. I think we have figured out this is not the way Americans think about it. I think the way people think about it is they kind of have a right price in their mind, and it might be like the lowest price that they remember. But we have to talk about the average cost of Thanksgiving, right? I mean, which I think is frankly pretty boring. Thanksgiving is actually a pretty cheap meal, all things considered, but it's around $61 this year. And so the Biden White House says 4.5% less than last year. But guess what? It's up 25% from 2019. And I think that's the way people think. I don't know that people necessarily use as their baseline, the month before COVID set in. They do think about the Trump economy. They think about the economy under Trump. What were gas prices then? What were food prices then? And they're right. They were considerably lower back then, and not just because of the ordinary pace of inflation. So what's the bottom line for Biden? A declining pace or rate of inflation, in other words, prices are still going up, they're just going up by less. That's just not good enough. That is not going to sell people, and that's not going to make Americans feel better about the Biden economy. I think it's going to take falling prices in the important things that set consumer psyches. I think they need to see the price of cereal going down, milk, certainly rent. I think we need to see actual deflation in some of these things for people's attitudes to change.
To improve his standing, Rick, though, is there anything inside his control he can do to kind of pump up his standing here?
It's a great question. We put this chart together showing inflation and Biden's approval rating. So as inflation was going up in 2022, Biden's approval rating was coming straight down. Inflation is now down, and Biden's approval rating is still down. It never went back up. And he's been talking up the economy the whole time. The president, doesn't matter who the president is, the president cannot convince sour people that they are better off than they feel like they are. And people, we have this weird psychological dichotomy, some cognitive dissonance here. People are spending money. So the same people who think the economy sucks are the ones spending all this money that gave us 4.9% GDP growth in the third quarter. And if you look at surveys, including one we did just a couple weeks ago, people consistently say they think everybody else is worse off, but they're feeling okay about themselves. I mean, it's very weird. People just think it sucks out there, I'm doing okay, but out there it's terrible. And it's not really that bad, but you can't convince people otherwise.
I mean, really, it's their fault there's inflation because they kept spending the money.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it is.
It is interesting, though, that cognitive dissonance you talk about. Somebody recently said to me, oh, yeah, inflation's going up. We need to change the president. And I'm like, well, I got news for you, buddy. Even if we change the president, doesn't mean you're going to turn off the
sad
inflation.
irony of this is, let's say we do get a new president in 2024. Inflation is going to be a lot lower in 2025, and people are going to say, see, it was all Biden.
Yeah. Right.
It's almost not Biden at all. I mean, you can argue that the one stimulus bill he signed in 2021 was a little bit too much. That probably did contribute to inflation. It's not the main cause. Mostly it's COVID disruptions, supply chain disruptions, that weird shift in demand over to goods when everybody was stuck at home. That's all reversing now, and you say it's them, the American consumers. I mean, it's us. It's all of us going out and spending money like we're going to do over the holidays this year. I mean, we're going to see 3.5, 4%, maybe 5% increase in holiday sales. So everybody's bummed out, but everybody's going to have a pretty fat holiday season.
Yeah, it seems that way. All right, there's one more challenge that you actually talked to Mark Zandi about this morning when it comes to the White House, and it has to do with public debt. So we want to listen again to what Mark Zandi told us this morning.
Now that rates are up, it's a big problem because debt plus higher rates means higher interest payments. Here's a factoid for you. We're going to be paying soon more in interest expense on our debt than we do to fund our defense budget. I mean, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And so we've got to make some changes. And, if you look at current law, if we make no changes in tax policy or spending policy, it's just unsustainable. Our debt load is going to rise to a place where the interest rates are going to rise. The economy is going to cave under the weight of all of that.
I don't know. Do you see any of those changes coming anytime soon, Newman?
No, they're not coming. And as part of that interview, I asked Mark Sandy, I said, is this the debt crisis? And he said, this is it. This is the debt crisis. So
where's the crisis part?
The crisis, so everybody has wondered for a long time, what is the debt crisis actually going to look like? Is it going to, like suddenly U.S. debt is going to get slashed from AAA to B- or something like that, and everything is going to explode and we're going to have depression? No, it looks as if this debt crisis is going to be incremental, and we've seen the beginnings of it with the increase in longer-term Treasury rates that we've been talking about, since it happened. Mainly it started over the summer, not because the Fed is raising short-term rates and it's passing through into the 10-year and into longer rates, including mortgages, but because something's going on in the market with all this Treasury debt that's coming on. For a while there weren't enough buyers of Treasury debt, which was pushing the rates up. Now the Treasury has been fudging. It's been shifting around its auctions, changing, offering, I think, a little bit more shorter-term debt and less longer-term debt, because it can do that. And the Treasury does work within markets and respond to the way markets are behaving and what demand is. But I'm not aware that the Treasury has ever had to sort of manipulate the nature of its auctions to try to ameliorate the effects of a lack of demand for Treasury debt. We've got foreign purchasers are now they're getting rid of debt. Japan is getting rid of U.S. debt. China's getting rid of U.S. debt. We are just going to issue a ton of debt. So the question becomes, what happens if there's just not enough demand for all this debt? I mean, and it happens at the margins, but interest rates start to go up. Interest expense for the government starts to go up, which Mark Sandy talked about. So it's happening, and I'm following the dialogue. I mean, there is talk in Congress of establishing this so-called fiscal commission. I'm not sure anybody's serious about it. But look, it's going to take higher taxes on businesses and the wealthy, and maybe have to go further than that. And it's going to take spending cuts, including Medicare and Social Security. There's no easy way around that fact, and neither politicians don't want to talk about one side or the other or all of it. So,
but even when you have respected economists like that sounding the alarm, saying crisis, it's here, it's now, we have to deal with it. You think there's any is the political pressure ratchet up at all here for some type of bipartisan commission to take this issue on seriously?
That's a great question, and there are a lot of gates you have to go through before it becomes. First, voters have to kind of understand what the problem is, and this is a complex sort of chain of connectivity, right? So we have too much debt. It pushes interest rates up. That affects you if you want to buy a car, take out a car loan or a mortgage. So if those rates go up, are you then going to call your member of Congress and say, do something about the national debt? I don't think we're there yet in terms of public understanding. So I think there's a lot of work to be doing in terms of public understanding. And I personally, we should be doing that, is explaining how this all connects and why it matters. We're going to have big decisions after the 2024 election. Some of the Trump tax cuts expire at the end of 2025. And there's going to be a big fight over what to do about that. They are tax cuts that were mainly for the wealthy. They're for wealthy individuals. And that's going to be an interesting fight to see if Republicans can persuade voters this is the right thing to do, keep wealthy people's taxes low. That'll be a first test, I think. Big test anyway.
All right, Rick, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it.